August 2nd, 2025. The skies over Ouagadougou weren't just hot, they were boiling. Not from the Sahel sun, but from the scream of a Pakistani JF-17 fighter jet cutting across African airspace. No parade, no press conference, just a war machine rolling onto Burkina Faso soil as a gift. But here's the curveball. This wasn't a leaked arms deal, and it wasn't a sale buried in paperwork. It was delivered in silence, no receipts, no official smiles, and still, the world lit up. Now here's the kicker. One blurry, 22-second clip broke past the usual gatekeepers in Brussels, D.C. and Paris. And somehow, it wasn't military insiders talking first. It was students, TikTok editors, meme creators, pushing this story into living rooms faster than CNN ever could. Before we go further, let me ask you, if your hometown suddenly got a fighter jet, no warning, no explanation, would you feel safer or more worried? Drop your honest take in the comments. I'm curious if we see this the same way. You're watching Africa Daily Good News. We cover the stories the big networks won't touch, from the streets of Bamako to the halls of Washington. For my friends watching from the US, from Brazil, from South Africa, from London, this isn't just another foreign headline. This is your world, just told from a different angle. And what happened in Burkina Faso that morning? It's not just about one jet. It's about a shift that could ripple across continents. Let's set the scene. It's not every day a country with no supersonic fleet wakes up with a jet that can outrun missiles. That morning in Ouagadougou, the JF-17 wasn't just metal and fuel. It was a challenge to the old script. For years, Burkina Faso's Air Force meant helicopters, patrol planes, and borrowed tech from allies. Now, overnight, they're linked to one of the most capable fighter platforms outside NATO hands. The JF-17 is no toy. Built by Pakistan with Chinese engineering, it's a multirole supersonic fighter that can track targets hundreds of miles away, lock on in seconds, and strike with precision. In raw specs, it closes a gap Africa has been told for decades it couldn't close. But here's the tension. Owning a machine like this is one thing. Making it part of your defense DNA is another. The average American car owner knows. Buying a sports car doesn't mean you can race Formula One tomorrow. Militaries are no different. And yet, this wasn't bought. It was given. No debt, no IMF strings, no endless committees debating readiness. Just, here you go. It's the kind of move that makes defense analysts lean forward and makes diplomats shift in their seats. Because in geopolitics, a gift is rarely just a gift. If you're Pakistan, you don't just hand over a fourth-gen fighter without expecting something: access, loyalty, influence. For ordinary people, though, the equation looks different. If you live in the Midwest and your town suddenly gets a state-of-the-art fire truck, you don't ask about the city council politics first. You wonder if it can save more lives. That's where the perception war begins, between what a jet can really do and what people believe it means. And here's the quiet fork in the road. If Burkina Faso integrates this jet, it could mark the start of an independent aerial capability, one that pushes back on decades of Western monopoly in the region. But if it sits grounded, it becomes something else entirely. A prop in a bigger play, a reminder that power can be symbolic as well as operational. Which is more dangerous for the status quo? A jet that flies, or a jet that doesn't need to? By nightfall, the question was no longer whether the JF-17 had landed. It was whether the landing itself had already shifted the ground under everyone's feet. And that shift was only just beginning to show. The strangest part? The jet didn't come with an instruction manual or a public explanation. Within hours of that clip hitting the internet, WhatsApp groups in Accra lit up. Telegram channels in Bamako were replaying it frame by frame, and TikTok edits in Nairobi had Traoré stepping out like a Marvel hero. No official statement, yet the narrative was already writing itself, without the people who should be controlling it. In military terms, silence is rarely neutral. When Washington delivers fighter jets to an ally, there's a press release, a handshake photo, maybe even a parade. Here, nothing. Which makes you ask, was the quiet the plan all along? A staged moment designed to bypass official media and hit the streets first? Because once the story belongs to the people, governments lose the edit button. On the ground in Burkina Faso, older generations remember when even a second-hand helicopter was front-page news. Now, their kids are sharing memes of a fourth-gen fighter jet like it's a sneaker drop. That shift isn't just generational, it's cultural. According to research on US media habits, when people see something unfiltered on social platforms, they're twice as likely to believe it's authentic compared to a polished news segment. The same logic applies here. The less it looks staged, the more real it feels. And this is where the gain or lose question hits. If this jet is operational, Burkina Faso gains a tool that could rewrite its security doctrine overnight. But it also gains attention, the kind that draws satellites, intelligence agencies, and foreign pressure. If it's a stunt, they lose nothing tangible. Yet they still gain the one thing every small state craves: psychological leverage. Which one would you take? By the time the sun set over Ouagadougou, the actual jet, real or not, had been overshadowed by the reaction. It wasn't just in the hangar, it was in the hashtags, in the WhatsApp forwards, in the tone of late-night conversations. And that energy was starting to spill beyond Burkina Faso's borders into places that weren't supposed to be watching. A single jet shouldn't be able to change how a continent sees itself, but this one did. In less than 12 hours, the footage had racked up millions of views, jumping from Kinshasa to Istanbul faster than any official press release could travel. The fact-checkers were still sipping coffee while the hashtags were already trending. In the US, most people are used to seeing fighter jets in stadium flyovers or action movies. In Burkina Faso, seeing one roll onto a runway under your flag, without a foreign pilot in sight, is a whole different emotional charge. For older citizens, it felt like a break from a lifetime of dependency. For the younger crowd, it was a flex, a signal that they didn't have to wait for someone else's permission to dream bigger. This is where the paradox shows. If the jet is real and ready, it could push Burkina Faso into a new chapter of military independence. If it's just a symbol, it still works, because symbols can move people faster than hardware can. And in geopolitics, moving people often matters more than moving planes. Most Americans don't think about air superiority until a conflict lands on their doorstep. But in the Sahel, even the rumor of owning a fighter jet changes how communities talk about safety, pride, and who gets to call the shots. According to social psychology research, belief can act as a force multiplier. Once people believe their side has an edge, they behave differently. That change in behavior alone can shift the balance of power. So here's where you come in. If you were in Traoré's seat, would you keep the world guessing, or would you show every card on the table? Drop your take below, because the answer says a lot about how you see power. And whatever your choice, remember, this story isn't slowing down. It's just taxiing for the next move. The closer you look at the JF-17 story, the more the details start to blur. There's no official delivery record in the UN Arms Trade Registry. Nothing in the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute database. Pakistan's Ministry of Defense hasn't acknowledged a sale, a loan, or even a handshake with Burkina Faso. For a transaction of this scale, that silence is almost louder than an announcement. This isn't how it normally works. When Pakistan sent JF-17s to Nigeria or Myanmar, the deals came with press photos, joint statements, and timelines for delivery. Here, there's only a shaky video from behind a chain-link fence and a wave of speculation. That's why some defense experts argue this could be a staged showpiece, a non-operational airframe meant to spark a message rather than fly a mission. In human terms, it's the difference between parking a Ferrari in your driveway and actually taking it on the track. Both change how your neighbors see you, but only one changes what you can do. If Burkina Faso is still years away from having trained pilots, radar infrastructure, and maintenance crews, then this jet, if it exists, may be more about optics than operations. And yet, there's another possibility. The quiet might not mean fake, it could mean classified. A covert training deal, infrastructure upgrades happening out of sight, or an alliance forming that isn't ready to be made public. In geopolitics, sometimes you keep a new card hidden, not to deny you have it, but to decide the perfect moment to play it. That uncertainty is the fuel. People don't rally around technical manuals. They rally around the idea of a leap forward. Whether this jet ever leaves the hangar, The notion that it could already shifts the way friends and rivals calculate their next move. And somewhere in that calculation, the next act of this story is already being set up. For all the noise online, the reality on the ground in Burkina Faso tells a different story. The country has no active fleet of supersonic fighters, no pilots trained for JF-17 operations, and no radar network built for high-speed combat. Its main airbase, designed for helicopters and transport planes, still shows dirt taxiways and open-air shelters in recent satellite images. This isn't unique to Burkina Faso. Many nations receive advanced equipment long before they have the ecosystem to support it. In the US, when a city gets new emergency gear, training and infrastructure upgrades follow for months, sometimes years. Without that, even the most advanced machine becomes a display piece, impressive to look at, but limited in function. That's the central tension here. If the JF-17 is genuine, it represents a leap in potential, but potential is only realized with investment. Instructors, simulators, secure hangars, supply chains for spare parts. Without these, owning a jet is like owning a racehorse without a track to run on. Some analysts frame it as a strategic gamble. Option A. Rush to build the capability, risking exposure and technical setbacks. Option B. Keep it symbolic for now, using the psychological boost to strengthen domestic confidence while the real capacity develops quietly. Both paths have costs. Both have rewards. The choice depends on whether immediate show of strength outweighs the value of patient preparation. And as the days pass, what's clear is that the JF-17, real, fake, or somewhere in between, has already started to reshape how Burkina Faso is perceived. That shift in perception is a form of power in itself, and it's a currency that doesn't need an engine to start running. The most powerful part of this story might be the part we can't prove. No tail numbers confirmed. No re-registration marks. No footage of a Burkina pilot even touching the controls. And yet, millions believe it's theirs. And belief is already altering the chessboard. In modern conflict, perception can be as decisive as hardware. The US military knows this well. Flyovers before big games aren't about defense, they're about morale. In the same way, this jet, real or not, has become a morale engine. For people in the Sahel, long used to drones and foreign aircraft overhead, flipping the script to "our skies, our rules" is a psychological shift with weight. This is also where the human pattern kicks in. When communities feel underestimated, they tend to rally harder around symbols that defy that image. Social scientists have found that even a rumored advantage can embolden decision-making. If your opponent thinks you can hit from farther away, they start acting like you already can. That behavior change alone can alter the pace and shape of engagements. The risk? If the truth is exposed too soon, the emotional surge could collapse just as quickly. That's the gamble Traoré may be taking, betting that the story's momentum will outpace the fact-checkers. If he's right, Burkina Faso gains more from the belief than from the machine itself. If he's wrong, the backlash could be sharper than the applause. So here's the thought I'll leave hanging. If you were in his position, would you chase a quick, loud win or a slow, quiet build? Let me know in the comments, because the choice says as much about you as it does about the jet. And whichever path you'd choose, the next turn in this story is already lining up just over the horizon. While the jet dominated headlines, Burkina Faso's real air power was already in the sky, and it didn't break the sound barrier. Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 drones, small enough to be dismissed as props in a parade, have been patrolling the Sahel for months. They don't draw crowds at airfields, but they have changed battles in ways no single fighter jet could. These drones have tracked militant convoys through the desert, directed ground forces to ambush points, and struck targets that would have taken weeks to locate by traditional means. In pure numbers, the TB2s have done more to shift the balance in Burkina Faso's security than any hypothetical JF-17. And they fit the country's doctrine: low altitude, high efficiency, minimal infrastructure required. It's a reminder of a human truth. We often fixate on the spectacular while overlooking the practical. Americans do it with sports cars over commuter vehicles. Militaries do it with jets over drones. But in day-to-day survival, the workhorses matter more than the showpieces. A fighter jet might inspire a nation, a drone keeps it alive. Still, symbols and tools aren't mutually exclusive. If Burkina Faso plays both games, leveraging the spectacle of the jet while quietly expanding drone operations, it could achieve something rare, a psychological edge abroad and a tactical edge at home. That blend of perception and capability is hard to counter because it forces adversaries to prepare for both. And as attention swirled around the runway, the hum of those drones kept weaving through the night, unseen by the crowds, but very visible to anyone watching the skies for a reason. The jet may never take off, but the idea already has. In a region where military headlines usually belong to foreign powers, seeing Burkina Faso at the center flips the frame entirely. Whether it's a functioning weapon or a staged spectacle, the psychological lift is already banked. On paper, the country's strength still comes from drones, helicopters, and ground units adapted to the Sahel's realities. But perception isn't written on paper. It's written in how people talk, plan, and react. For decades, the unspoken rule was that cutting-edge air power belonged to someone else. Now, even the rumor of ownership bends that rule. This is a dynamic Americans might recognize. In sports, a rookie with one jaw-dropping play can change how opponents defend for the rest of the season. In geopolitics, the same principle applies. If adversaries think you have a new capability, they start making choices around it, even before you've proved it works. That shift in their behavior can be as valuable as the capability itself. The gain here is obvious: momentum, pride, and a seat in conversations that once ignored you. The loss is risk. If the illusion cracks, the backlash can undercut the very confidence it built. But in a media environment where speed beats certainty and impressions outlast corrections, betting on the story can sometimes buy more time than betting on the hardware. And so the JF-17 sits, maybe in a hangar, maybe only in the minds of millions. But either way, it's already airborne in the one arena where borders don't hold: the collective imagination. Sometimes the loudest weapon is the one that never fires. In this case, a single jet, real, fake, or somewhere in between, managed to punch through layers of skepticism and land directly in the public's imagination. It didn't need to dogfight or drop payloads. It only needed to exist in the right way, at the right time. For Burkina Faso, the before and after isn't about hardware inventories. Before, they were an afterthought in global air power discussions. After, they're a headline, a hashtag, and a question mark in every defense briefing from Paris to Washington. That's a leap most countries can't buy, even with fleets of operational jets. The human side of this is easy to miss. Most Americans are used to their military dominance being a given. In the Sahel, the conversation has always been about endurance, not supremacy, staying alive through asymmetric fights, holding ground inch by inch. When a symbol suddenly flips that narrative, it doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. The gain is undeniable: influence, pride, and the rare ability to set the tone of the conversation. The loss is the constant risk that the curtain might fall, revealing more theater than substance. But as long as the momentum holds, that risk stays in the background, overshadowed by the story people want to believe. And so, whether the JF-17 ever leaves the runway is almost beside the point. It has already completed its first mission, altering the mental map of power in Africa, and for now, that mission is still flying.